Alright, so today I'm going to change my alternator out on this 2007 Honda Pilot. I just changed out my power steering pump last weekend, and what I thought, the power steering pump needed to be changed, but when I changed it out I still had a whine that I actually thought was my power steering pump getting worse. But I had a buddy come over with a stethoscope and we traced it to the alternator. And the alternator, I'm getting a whine out of the alternator right now. I'm going to go ahead and turn the engine over and let you hear this real quick. Go ahead and turn the engine on. So I've let that go a week. I ordered the part, and I think it's beginning to get progressively worse, especially with regards to charging. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that part, and we'll go through it together. Alright, so before you get started, as always, you're going to want to remove your negative battery cable from the battery. Disconnect that. That's a 10 millimeter. I'm pretty sure. Hang on. Get my socket. 10 millimeter on that. And that's what it is. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and remove that negative battery cable to be safe. Go ahead and remove the engine cover. My engine is pretty dirty. I'm kind of ashamed of that. And then you can see what we're going to be dealing with down here. Alternator sits right down here at the front of the engine. It's a pretty tight space. I'm going to do a few things once I get my serpentine belt off, which we'll do here in just a second. I'm going to do a couple things to kind of give myself a little bit more room over on this side of the engine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my coolant reservoir, and that just kind of lifts out, and I'm going to lift it and set it on the front of the engine. And then I'm going to take my power steering reservoir and I'm going to lift that out, and there's a little 10 millimeter bolt that will hold that bracket in place, and I'm going to remove that bracket so that we can push this stuff back over, which will give us room when we're ready to pull that alternator out. The other thing that I've already done is I've taken this bolt off of the air conditioner, this bracket, hose bracket right here, and that's another 10 millimeter bolt that just kind of pops right out, and it'll give us a little more play on this hose. The other thing that I've actually already done is taken this wire harness off of this clip. You can see it right there. The clip is just an easy, you can just use your thumb or a screwdriver and just push in, and then it'll pop right off. And again, that's just going to give us a little more room and a little more play as we go through here and try to get this thing off. And I'm hoping I can do this before I get rained on, so we'll see. Alright, to get your serpentine off, if you look down here, this is kind of hard to do by filming at the same time, but if you look, I don't know if you can see if I can get this in there a little bit more. That right there is your tensioner for your serpentine belt. It's a 19 millimeter. And what you want to do is get a 19 millimeter, and what I've done is I've got a breaker. With a 19 millimeter, and then I put kind of a little cheater bar on it so I can get a little bit more leverage. And you want to put that down on it, and you're going to push back towards the front or the rear, but the back of the car, and that's going to release the tension on the belt. You can take the belt right off. Alright, so I've got my breaker on the bolt, and then I got my little cheater bar to give me a little bit more leverage, and you're just going to push back towards the front of the car, or again the back. I say the front, but it's the back. So you're pushing back towards the windshield. Okay, so I've pushed back. Let's release the tension on the belt. I'm going to go ahead and let that off, and I'm going to remove that belt. Alright, you can see now that I've got the belt off. It opens it up. And again, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the coolant reservoir and I'm just going to lift it right out. I'm just going to set it kind of up on the, I guess I could go up on the engine, somewhere where it's going to be, out of the way. Get a little play at the tube. There is a little, I'm sure I don't spill it all over the car. There is one little tube bracket right here that your coolant tube will buckle in. You can just pop it out of there and then pop it back in a little bit later. It's the first time I've done this, so if the video is crap, I apologize. Alright, you can see our alternator down below. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop out the power steering reservoir, and as you can see there's a little 10mm bolt right there, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this bracket so we can move stuff and have a little bit more room to maneuver. Okay, so I got my 10mm down on the bracket. I can do this without breaking my knuckles. Very tight. Put the timing belt on this last summer. Probably didn't get that tightened up like it needed to. Alright, so there's the bolt and the bracket for the power steering reservoir. Now, like I said, hopefully this is going to give us just a little more room to maneuver in here. Okay, again, remove that bolt on the air conditioner hose so you have a little bit more movement there. And again, your wiring harness. Okay. Alright, so one of the things that I'm kind of paranoid about is OEM versus aftermarket parts. And I use a few resources just to kind of research, YouTube of course, and then Piloteers, which is a forum, which is an incredible resource. Lots of guys that know what the heck they're doing there, much more than I do, that can give advice. And usually if it's something's going on with your car, it's happened and somebody's had to deal with it already, and there's information there for you. So definitely recommend Piloteers. The other thing is, as I got on and started doing research, I was looking at dealerships. I looked at Majestic Honda, which is an online, they have an online parts catalog, and their replacement, remanufactured, is Denso, and it ran, I think, around 228, and so I was going to go with that. And then I got on Rock Auto and started looking at the alternators that they had as well for replacement, remanufactured, and they had the same Denso listed, but for about $110 less. I was a little nervous because I just, you see something that's $110 cheaper, and you kind of go, I'm a believer in you get what you pay for, and I'm worried that I'm not going to get that same product that the dealership had. However, I went ahead and ordered from Rock Auto, and what I got was a Denso alternator. It's exactly, you can see the sticker and part number there. It's remanufactured. It says it's a Denso remanufactured alternator. So I saved about $110 going through Rock Auto versus Majestic. I've had some trouble with Rock Auto in the past. They kind of messed up the shipping on a couple of my orders, and customer service wasn't great. I was really unhappy with regards to how I was treated, but decided I'd give them another shot, and Well, everything shipped on time and got here early and looks great. So again, Rock Auto is another good resource to use online. One other thing with regards to the alternator, when you're looking at it, you know, Majestic is when you put your make and model and everything, it'll take you to exactly the part that you need. On Rock Auto, you're going to have to kind of make sure that you have the correct engine number in there. One of the alternators is designed to go with the engines that have the economy feature on it. So be sure that, and I can't remember the part number, the engine number off the top of my head, but just be sure you double check that before you purchase the alternator. Alright, so it looks like there's a couple. First thing I'm going to do is remove a couple 10mm bolts. I'm going to remove this wire harness right here, and I'm going to remove this 10mm right here, and then I'm going to take off the bracket. So get that off, and you can see. Alright, so now that I have those two wires off, you can see the harness is now free, and that's now free from this bracket right here. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this wire here, which is underneath the, kind of see it. I have to remove the rubber topper, and then that plug that's on the back, which is right. Open it. Okay, see the plug right there, and then it's wired. It's got a nut on it. Okay, the two bolts that you're going to take off, there's a bolt right down here. Kind of right below the tensioner. You can see it, it's right there. And there's another one it's below right here. You can see it, it's right connected below this mounting bracket. We just took those wire harnesses off of. Let's see it right there. So let's see if we can get those off. The upper bulb is a 12, the lower is a 14. Okay, so I've got that rubber boot off of it now. Maybe. You can kind of see, I've got that back, and we're going to have to undo that bolt right there. And then there's the other plug that you're going to redo, take out from the back of the alternator. Alright, so you can see now that my alternator is free. The one thing I didn't do was unplug the back plug yet. I'm a big guy and I can't get my hand down in there to do that, so I'm going to try and maneuver it out of there before I unplug that back plug off of it. We'll see how that goes. Alright, so I've kind of pushed it out of its resting spot, and I've just got this more exposed. Now you want to be careful that thing doesn't drop and pull this thing off. As I was doing that, it kind of gave way and kind of gave me a little scare there, but just be sure you're staying aware where this is at and how much weight's being put on this, because you don't want to do that. I may not have, maybe shouldn't have done it in the first place, but again, it's probably going to be easier for me to do it this way. Alright, so now I'm completely free. And I'm just kind of sitting down there in the engine compartment. I'm trying to decide which way to go here. It looks like if I just, the pulley's facing straight down, so what I'm going to try and do is just get it and lift it. This has got some movement here, and I'm just going to try and use this space right here to pull it straight up out. We'll see if that works. Alright, so that didn't work. Coming straight up here didn't work. What I did was took advantage of the space that I have over here now, because I removed that bracket, and just took the whole thing, which is right here now, pulley first, just went straight over, and this moved, you know, I have play right here, and I was just able to pull the whole thing out. Went under this air conditioning hose and pulled the whole thing out this way. So you may just have to work with it a little bit to see what worked best for you. Alright, so you can see the original part here with the part number, Denso, and then I've got my replacement part right here as well. Now one thing you're going to have to do, and I've seen it done a couple ways, some people take the bracket off before they pull it out to make it easier to get out. I left the bracket on. That's per the instructions in the Honda manual. So I'm going to go ahead and take this bracket off now. See the bolt that's going to have to be removed. I'm going to transfer that over to this new alternator. And that bolt is a 12mm. Alright, so I've transferred the bracket onto the new alternator. I've got the bolt on, but I left it loose so I can fit it the way it's supposed to when I get it down in. And alright, let's see about getting this sucker back in the car. Alright, so I've got the new one in there. I went back in the same way that I came out. So right, again, between the power steering reservoir and this air conditioning hose. I reconnected both of them, put the switch on. This is still loose, but the nut is on. So now I'm going to place it and see if I can get the bolts in to get everything back where it needs to go. Alright, got everything back in, lined up. Took a couple minutes, but put the bottom one in first, and then came up and put the top one in. Now I'm going to tighten that bracket bolt down all the way. That's just below here, and we should be ready to put the serpentine on. Alright. Alright, so it's all tight. Gonna get everything back on the bracket and get the wire harness bolted back on there. This wire harness here, put back on. Alright, so I got my wire harness back on to that bracket. Everything's plugged in, tightened down. Good. I'm going to go ahead and do my serpentine, and then I'll go ahead and put all my reservoirs back. Give me a little bit of room to work with the serpentine before I put those reservoirs back. So alright, so I've got everything back in. Serpentine is on. Replace my power steering reservoir back in the bracket, replace the bracket, replace my cooling reservoir. Just double check, make sure everything is as it should be. And we're going to go ahead and try and start it. Now, this thing whined all week long, and just today it started having trouble turning over. So hopefully I can still have enough charge to get this thing to turn over one last time and get it started. We'll see how it goes. Alright, so engine's running, whining is going. Still kind of singing like a clicking like a Singer sewing machine. I probably need to adjust the valve. A little above my pay grade though. Alright, hope this is healthy.